Hey everybody, it's Charlie from Daily Motor. Unfortunately, I don't have too many great places in which to start these comparison reviews because I don't really have a good way to get two bikes away from my house. So I have to sort of start with what we got. But today we've got the comparison between the Suzuki V-Strom 800 DE and the all-new Honda Transalp 750, or do they call it 750? I guess they just call it the Honda Transalp. Serendipitously and perhaps a little bit planned to have both of these bikes in the stable at the same time, so I couldn't not do a review on them. They are fairly similar, both with new parallel twin 270-degree crank engines, both making pretty identical horsepower figures as well. The Suzuki weighs a little bit more, and the Honda is quite a bit cheaper. So I'm going to have all the stats below. You're going to see all those. This is not a stat-heavy review. This is not a spec sheet comparison. You can get those from a lot of those YouTube channels from India that just upload stock footage and give you the specs about the bikes that you can read online. No, this is going to be a ride review, so I'm going to minimize the time here in my garage and maximize the time out on the bikes. A few last things I should note. The DE here did come with the side cases. I took those off for a little bit of fairness. Main differences between the bikes as spec'd is the Suzuki's got these crash bars. The Honda does not. But they both have the optional metal skid plates on there, and the tire pressures have both been set to their placards, so I think we're ready to ride. Starting off first with the Suzuki. An entirely new model for 2023 and then getting into 24 here. This is kind of a middle ground between the V-Strom 1050 now and the V-Strom 650, of which I used to own. Liking this color scheme here, the black with the blue. I also like the other colors, the yellow and gray that Suzuki offers. It's cool that Suzuki usually does a good job at having those different colorways. We've got a clicker adjustable rear shock. I like to have that, especially when I throw my wife on the back. It's nice to be able to just dial the preload up nice and easy. Overall, pretty sophisticated shock package, all things considered on here. A lot of adjustability. Now, we're getting into that price point or so, about 14 grand, where people are going to start paying attention to their suspension and fine-tuning it to their body types and their weights and uses. I think when you're getting more of the beginner sort of bikes, you're not going to have quite as much of that. You're going to have people more just buying it and riding it sort of deal. The Suzuki carries its weight high. It's a little bit heavier. We're closer to 500 pounds for this bike, and it'd be a little bit more if we kept the saddlebags on the back, but big fuel tank up top, just over 5 gallons. Definitely nice to have that. You do feel the weight as you're maneuvering this around. It's been a bit of a trademark of V-Stroms. 21-inch wheel in the front though, and it stays upright pretty well. You got to kind of fall into it. It's a very comfortable riding experience. Comfortable meaning relaxed. However, this is not a dedicated review, of which I will be shooting one of those, so if you do want to see more thoughts specifically just on the Suzuki here, check the link below. But I'm supposed to be making some observations and contrasting those with the Honda. The V-Strom's got a heavy clutch pull over there. Both slipper clutches, assisted clutches, if you will. Not exactly the same technology, but the V-Strom is definitely heavier. Both bikes have ride and drive modes. This one, actually not modes specifically, but adjustments you can make for the individual aspects of the modes. We've got traction control adjustment, ABS adjustment, and power mode adjustment. And we've got bi-directional quick shifter, something that we're seeing on more and more bikes. In my experience, it's worked better on the Suzuki. You can do it in all the gears, you can do it in both directions, whether you have on throttle, off throttle. It all works quite well here on the V-Strom. It is a wide handlebar setup on the Suzuki here. I've found myself, I've really got my arms out wide and almost a silly commanding presence. It's not to the point where they've gotten sore, but you do notice how out wide your hands are, and then you notice that also when you're trying to split lanes,
between the saddlebags in the back and then the width of these handlebars. It's this is a harder bike to split lanes with, or even just filtering traffic, if you will. The Suzuki has an adjustable windshield, 3 different levels. I just put it up to the highest level today. I've been riding around on it with at the middle level, and it's not particularly easy. I mean, alright, it's not hard either, but it does take a little bit of time. You have to do it with an Allen key that is not supplied on the bike. Underneath the seat, you don't have a tool kit. You have 2 specific tools, a screwdriver and an Allen wrench that takes off the side panels, but that same Allen wrench will not work for the windshield. So unfortunately, you don't have a tool on the go to adjust the windshield. You have to do that in your garage, and it takes a few minutes just to pop the screws out there and adjust it. Unfortunately though, at 5'10", 165, I do still seem to be getting a good amount of wind buffeting even on the highest setting. I was hoping that it would direct enough wind above me, but that does not seem to be the case. Not a very significant windshield. I'd be tempted to just take it off and ride with some naked air, or definitely go with a larger shield, which is what I did with my V-Strom. You can see right there the quick shifter working well for us. I have found myself primarily riding this bike in the B power mode. C is too aggressive, it's too snatchy. It really it amps up the electronic throttle adjustment here and makes the bike feel too manic. B feels more natural, more like a cable actuated throttle, more linear feel, and then C is more reserved. It really calms the off throttle, on throttle nature. Despite being an entirely TFT digital display, I do appreciate that we have an analog style tachometer there, because I like having the sweeping nature to kind of catch my eye and tell me when it might be time to shift visually, because this engine is not very loud. I'm sure it has something to do with Euro 5 emissions regulations, but it's not a very grunty, guttural exhaust note. And you'll see when we're out on the Honda after this that the Honda does have a pretty cool exhaust note from the factory. They're both 270-degree crank motors, but this one is really subdued, and it doesn't really match the character of the engine. The sound doesn't match the character, the riding character, because it is a fun, powerful, aggressive engine, but I find myself really in need of some sort of aftermarket exhaust. We'll see as we get riding more spiritedly here that it's just not loud. It's not very vocal. One thing the Suzuki does have that the Honda does not is an ambient air temperature readout. For some reason, there's no thermometer on the Honda. I really don't understand that. It's an adventure bike. Switch over into A throttle for a second here. So up here about 7,000 RPM, really ringing this out, and all I hear is air. I don't hear the bike's motor at all, and obviously you're gonna hear a lot of wind on a motorcycle, but at full tilt, I'd like to hear my engine somewhat when it's screaming up at redline. Even that downshift right there now slowing down. I mean, you all are hearing exactly what's in my helmet. When you're on A throttle mode, it gets so jumpy so early on in the throttle, it feels artificial. It doesn't feel natural. So I'm going to switch back to B. Go with that. There we go. It still allows you to lean on and get full power. You just got to twist a little more. Gives you a little more fine-tunability. It will be interesting to get directly off this and onto the Honda, though, to see if the Honda feels faster with the kind of difference in power to weight. I can't get over how smoothly the quick shifter works sometimes on this one. It's just, you can just be cruising along, low RPMs like this, and flip the shifter and right into the next gear. Super smooth. And then down, down. Of course, a bunch of peg clearance, Brakes feel great, no issues there. They grab really strong. You got adjustable brake lever, but no adjustable clutch lever. So we're not gonna have a super hardcore off-roading comparison here. Definitely go check out Ian over at Big Rock Moto if you really want to see these bikes push to their limits off-road, but a little bit of dirt road trail action here and kind of compare. Let's change the traction control to, here we go, there we go, G traction control, and we'll keep it on B power mode, and let's shut off the rear wheel ABS off. Okay. Both bikes have about 90-10, maybe 80-20 style tires, on-road, off-road. So neither are going to be amazing, but once we get into a little bit more dirt here, we'll hit the brakes and hit the gas and see how they react. Let's start off with our off-road hill tests. First is going to be a low-speed climb, just kind of see how this reacts. I'm pretty sure we still have Suzuki's stall assist that applies a little bit of extra throttle at low speeds just as you let off the clutch. So I can pretty much almost nearly let off the clutch without providing any power. You do also have Suzuki's one-touch start, which is nice. So let's see. Climb up that, 7 or 8 miles per hour or so. Back down here. 5'10", 32-inch inseam. I'm not exactly flat-footing the bike, so when it comes to these slower speed kind of walking at sections, I don't have a ton of control if the bike starts to go one way or the other. I can kind of catch it as it starts to fall. But again, the Suzuki wears its weight pretty high. How about this? All right, up that pretty confidently. Let's come back down this side, continue on the road. Nice bump absorption coming up over some of these rocks and bumps. Just a welcome change from the older V-Strom suspension. All right, 20 mile per hour stop. And then let's go. So gravel gives us a little bit of slippage without losing the bike. It's kind of cool, especially for someone who's a little bit less experienced riding a big heavy bike like this off-road. It's gonna help keep you a little bit in sorts. Ooh, yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. I mean, this soaks things up really well. It's filtering out a lot of those bumps coming through the fork. How about ground clearance? Let's see if we can make it down up this. There we go. No skid plate meatage right there. Standing on the Strom. Let's see. Pretty comfortable. Full leg extension. I can still reach down the handlebars. I don't have to do a ton of squatting. You know, it's going to take you a little while to get confident on a bike like this, but if you're already used to larger adventure bikes, you're going to be really happy with how this absorbs and handles it. Throw a little bit more aggressive tires on here, and you got yourself a great do-it-all bike. And again, if you're a heavier person, you want to ride a little more aggressive, you just dial that suspension up, or maybe you gear it up for a big trip or something. Again, you can adjust it right there, and away you go. Coming up to the highway section here after this light, and it must be pointed out, if you're not aware already, that neither the V-Strom nor the Transalp come with cruise control. And I don't quite understand that, because both of them have electronically controlled throttles. Both of them cost over 10 grand. And it's something that a lot of both of the riders of both camps have asked for. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's something that either, if not both brands, bring out on a future model year as something you can upgrade to. In fact, we've already seen now we've got V-Strom 800 and the 800DE and the different other types of V-Stroms, but there's just the one Transalp now. So I could see them coming out with like a Transalp SE that has a little bit more advanced suspension and cruise control. But it's just a shame because it's such a simple, relatively simple electronic aspect that to hold out on us is pretty lame. But clearly no problem getting up to speed. This bike does rate a few miles per hour high, so I'm going to set it about 74 so you can hear what 70 is going to be like. Pretty average. Again, suspension doing a good job. I will say with the windshield in the higher position, it's better than it was a little lower in terms of coverage and noise, but I'm getting hit in the side of my torso with wind and about halfway up my helmet. Once we hit this concrete, I'll twist it from 74 full at 6 gears, see how fast we accelerate. Oh yeah. Plenty of speed available to you here. We still got a lot of revs to go. Fuel economy's been pretty comparable on both bikes too, and I was a bit surprised by that because the gearing is a little higher here on the Suzuki. If we slow back down to about 74, 73, we're sitting about 5,200 RPM, 52, 5,300. The Honda sits even lower than that. You don't feel any sort of vibration, I should point out, or anything. I mean, the motors are very well balanced out, very smooth. Maybe the slightest bit coming through the bike, but on our commuter fuel economy test, the Suzuki only managed a few miles per gallon lower than the Honda. I don't have the numbers right in front of me. You will have seen them already. I think this one was about 48 and the Honda was around 50. And that was with the bags on this DE and without the bags on the Honda. So I'm surprised we don't see a little different, but again, they do make about the same power, but the Honda's a little lighter. So yeah, a little surprised there. What's impressed me so much about the V-Strom, having it over this last month or so, is that it feels like you're getting a full, proper adventure bike experience. With my 650, I always felt like even though I had the adventure trim and I had the spoked wheels and a little bit of plastic skid plate protection that came from the factory and everything, it always felt like I had a budget adventure bike. And I knew that. I mean, I paid for that. I understood what it was. But it was kind of like if you wanted a full adventure bike from Suzuki, you're stepping all the way up to the big 1000, and not everybody wants to run around with that big hunk of metal between you. You know, a little bit lighter weight is what some people are looking for. So now you can have a little bit of that lighter weight experience and a little bit less power, but again, still plenty there. And you don't feel like you're missing out anymore. You're not missing out on the ground clearance. You're not missing out on suspension performance. And that's where I do kind of get frustrated that we don't have cruise control, because if you added that in there, you'd have everything. You wouldn't be missing a single thing from a full-size adventure bike. And realistically, you can add throttle locks, and I'm sure certain aftermarket companies will give you some sort of cruise control. But it's frustrating that you can't just get that out of the factory, because Suzuki's given you everything else you'd want in a mid-size adventure bike from the factory. Ooh, okay, there's a little bit of weirdness right there. Sometimes when you have the quick shifter enabled, if you do shift with the clutch, it can get a little weird on you. I would like to have some more character from the engine, mostly from the note, the engine note, but it'd be nice to have that. Other than that, quick shifter works well, riding position's good. I am slightly more canted forward on this bike, I think, than the Honda. So I do find myself with a little bit of back soreness after 4 or so hours in the saddle. Looks like the handlebars are pretty much just as far back as they're going to sweep also. So that's something to keep in mind for riders a little on the shorter side. But the big fuel tank's nice, the handguards are nice. Suzuki really thought of a lot with this bike, and there's very little to complain about. So let's get back to the house, let's hop on the Honda, head out and do the same route. We're gonna go be static here in a moment, but I want to give you some of my super raw impressions going from one bike to the other. And first things first, listen to this startup. A little bit more guttural there, and then you sit much more in the Transalp. It just, everything feels more compact and a little less significant. It feels more like a very large dirt bike, like an extension of a CRF 300L, more than the V-Strom feels like a large bike compared to this. There's something about the tone of this motor. It sounds like a V10. Tell me if you all hear that. If you're kind of into cars as well, if you've ever had a 5-cylinder or a 10-cylinder, the intake, it's got that sort of howl to it. I don't know what it is. It's really cool though. Yeah, narrower handlebar and hand position. Obviously no sort of hand guards on this one, although you can get them. It's funny because for how similar they are in engine specs, the bikes, and I should say engine specs and just overall, like looking at them on like a build configurator or spec sheet or something, you'd think they're very similar bikes. I mean, they're both middleweight adventure bikes, but they feel very, very different. The Honda feels lazier. It feels slower. I actually thought that this made less power before I looked at the spreadsheet or the spec sheets side by side, and I was surprised to see that they're so similar. I'd like to see dyno charts on both of them, because I think between the fact that this engine sounds more lively, you just expect it to have more get up and go lower down, and it doesn't really. Or maybe it does. It's certainly no slouch. It's just so funny how different the characters between the two bikes are. Here we are, stationary with the Transalp. And again, different look to the bike. I mean, yes, it doesn't have the mounting points in the back for the cases, and it doesn't have the crash bars up front, but even then, just a different sort of vibe to the bike. A little bit more naked feeling, and a little bit more kind of upright and centered here, a little more compact. The Suzuki feels like a bigger bike. That's the biggest takeaway you can take from both of these, is this bike feels a little bit more subtle. The V-Strom feels a little bit more substantial. Smaller exhaust, it looks like, on here too. I bet it's a little bit lighter. Both bikes could benefit from custom exhaust. I'd like to hear the one that Ian over at Big Rock put on his V-Strom or Transalp. Again, settling up to a much lower seat height on this one, and I can actually flat foot it. I'm just sitting just that much lower. Makes a little difference. Again, adjustable brake lever, but no adjustable clutch. A little bit busier setup for your fingers down here, though. So let's get the TFT display going. Looks slightly smaller, but still gives you the same information that you need, except for not having that stupid outside temperature. I don't know why we're lacking in that. A lot of different adjustability in your ride modes. So this actually has real modes. We've got Sport, Standard, Rain, Gravel, and then a user-defined mode in which you can adjust traction control, ABS, power, and engine braking. I find that interesting. And if that's not enough adjustability for you, you can hold this right down and then go into the settings menu, go down to Quick Shifter, and you can adjust the aggression of the quick shifter both up and down. So we've got hard, medium, and soft. I've been riding it with soft most of the time, but let's try out medium a little bit, see if I notice any differences there. Hard didn't seem too dramatically different. Maybe medium's a sweet spot. The Transalp also has self-canceling turn signals. So that's something that I've only kind of experienced work properly a few times, but admittedly, because I'm not used to them, I just have a natural tendency to reach down and turn the signals off on my own. But you'll see as we lean into some corners and come back up, the signals will turn off on their own. As with both bikes, there's a bunch of functionality. You can adjust how the display looks. I think you can even, let's see, display type. What does that give us? Yeah, look at all these different types we can choose from here. That's fun. Ooh, all right, I like that one, but I really like this one. So we're gonna go with this for a little bit. It's fun having that adjustability. If they're gonna give you this big boring screen with no analog tachometer, at least they give you the ability to customize it a little bit. That's fun. And this Transalp in particular has heated grips equipped. So even though I don't have the hand guards, I have a different way of keeping my hands warm. And they do get hot. Very nice. You just press this function button and then you see that come up. You can do that. But this function button can also be used for other, like say you had lights, low down fog lights installed or something like that. You can have those wired in to toggle with the function button. It's fired up. I'm in user mode right now. Let's start off in standard, but I have found myself liking sport mode on this bike more than on the Suzuki. I like the jumpiness of the throttle on this one. The brakes felt more modulatable on the Suzuki. I'm gonna coin that term. This one is a little bit more, once you squeeze them, they feel a little bit more on or off, whereas the Suzuki felt like you could push into them at more variance. It's funny what just some audible encouragement can do to make a machine feel more lively. I might have to rescind my comments about the quick shifter. The quick shifter seems to be working pretty well. Throughout my times with both bikes, I've found the Honda stuttering some on quick shifting, but maybe that was just in the soft quick shifter mode. This one seems, now that it's in normal or medium, whatever it's called. There we go. There's a little bit more of a bump to it. Yeah, I don't know. I guess they're closer than I remembered. If you're a smaller torsoed rider, I really think you're going to be more comfortable on the Honda. And conversely, if you're a big person, I think you're going to be more comfortable on the Suzuki. This has more of a kind of arms tight situation. However, if you're going to be commuting and you live in an area where you're allowed to lane filter and or lane split, I highly recommend the Honda over the Suzuki. I'll have to measure the widths. This one just, even if it's only an inch or two, it makes it feel much more confident coming in between vehicles and mirrors on the vehicles.
All right, I wasn't crazy. We've got 37 inches, roughly. This is going to be hard to do with one hand, but I just measured it. About 37 inches handlebar to handlebar on the V-Strom, and only 33 inches handlebar to handlebar on the Transalp. So, significant difference there. And I'm not factoring in the handguards because I know that this Honda doesn't have it, and the Suzuki does. But yeah, about 2 inches on either side for the Suzuki. Just while we're here, just got in the 850 GS as well. Let's compare that. BMW 850 GS about 35 inches side to side. So I'm not crazy. The V-Strom is remarkably wide at the handlebars. It's kind of weird.
The gearing is so low on this bike. Sometimes I find myself looking down and seeing I'm only 3,000 RPM or something. I'm like, oh gosh, I didn't expect that. And we'll see when we're on the highway also that it is really down there. The seats are very comparable. I haven't gotten sore on either of them over a long ride, but I also haven't been noticing them being particularly plush. I think they're pretty comparable. All right, let's see if the self-canceling turn signal works here. Not the sharpest corner, but I'm gonna lean into it. A little bit of steering angle. Come back up, and it's off. Okay, that's cool, right? Definitely still hear this motor. You notice the lighter weight of the Honda here, and you also notice that it's not carrying the weight as high. The bike feels happier to go from one side to the other, lay itself over. It's not that we're necessarily changing directions quite as quickly. We still got that 21-inch wheel in the front, but you do feel more perched and a little bit like the bike's a little bit happier to carve around these things than the Suzuki. Same thing as with the Suzuki, we're gonna flip over into gravel mode for this dirt section. That puts us into ABS off-road mode, but in order to turn the ABS off in the rear, you do have to. The way I know to do it is in user mode, and then you hold the mode button, you can customize it. It's possible that you can turn off rear ABS and gravel as well, but I'm just going to stick with it in off-road mode for the moment so that I can get the rest of the gravel mode settings. Around town, riding as a single up sort of person, you're not going to notice too much difference in the suspension between these two bikes. However, the Honda does not have the clickable adjustable preload in the rear. We don't have as much adjustment in the front either. It's a more basic shock package all around. So if you're going to be loading it up with gear or people behind you, then you're not going to be able to adjust that very easily. You got to go in with a tool and adjust your preload, and I doubt most people are going to be doing that from ride to ride. And then once you start getting it off-road, that's where you feel a little bit less compliance, a little more firmness. At 165, I'm not exactly compressing this thing down, but I'm already feeling more bumps being transferred to me rather than being soaked up by the fork oil. Same thing, we're gonna come up here nice and slow, get about halfway up, come to a stop, and then slowly don't have that stall assist that the Suzuki's got. But, oh, forks and knives. Okay, that stalled out pretty high speed. I didn't expect it to stall there. Alright, so not a super heavy situation there with the clutch. It is a lighter clutch overall, so okay, you gotta be a little bit more careful. Walking it down, like I said, I do have a little bit more confidence touching the ground with my feet, and then also just the fact that the bike isn't as high with its center of gravity. Rotate it around. Now I'm a bit nervous for this section, see if I can keep up my momentum, get up the hill. Ooh, okay, so we had a little scrapage back there too. It's possible I hit it at a slightly different line, but I did not notice any scrapage when we did the V-Strom. Okay, so a little easier to be confident as a rider, but you notice the bike not being quite as capable as a package. Let's bring it to a stop from 20. ABS kicking in. Oh, okay, so this does not this does not spin the traction control, kind of give you that little bit of slip in the dirt that the Suzuki does. This kills it a lot quicker. It feels a lot less natural than the Suzuki's gravel power mode, or gravel traction control, I should say. What would happen? Well, all right, let's switch over to user, and let's turn the traction control down to 1. All right. Oh, all right. It's taking it, but these are bumps that I didn't even notice on the V-Strom. I was like, oh, okay, we're going through, it's fine. Let's try this low speed clearance section. All right, so still not hitting there, but over here. No, still good there, okay. How about standing? Still very easy to stand on this bike too. Arms just about full extension with my legs fully extended. All right, I do think you're gonna get fatigued a little bit quicker riding off-road with this one, but a little bit less weight and a little bit easier to put your body around it. As weird as it is, I kind of prefer throwing this one around off-road But I will say, if I were going to be riding like a whole day of kind of easier trail, I'd want the more advanced suspension of the Suzuki. Having the traction control dialed back a little bit here in my user mode, though, does seem to be letting me slide it out a little bit more, have a little bit more fun. Yeah, between the sound and the feel of being on the bike, this one just feels a little bit more like a giant dirt bike. The Suzuki feels a little bit more grown up. Alright, climbing on the highway here with the Honda. The speedometer on this one's a little bit more accurate when I checked them. So it's at about 71, 72. The wind protection, despite not being adjustable, is a little better on this one. Still hit me in the helmet about the same spot, but the width is just a little tiny bit wider on my body. But again, look at that, 71, 72, we're at about 4,300 RPM or so. So theoretically speaking, cruising on the highway on both of these, this one should be getting better fuel economy by, you'd think, a decent amount, right? But because we're geared down so much, a strong right turn, the wrist takes a little bit longer to get up to speed. Now we're building some, and you can see as we get up in revs, still no problem. Continuing to accelerate. I'm sure the bike's got a lot left in it. Have to mention the lack of cruise control, as with both. But no vibrations coming through the handlebars or the pegs. Could absolutely sit and cruise on this bike, no problem. I'd put a larger windshield on it. Here we go. This is a situation that I would not be comfortable sliding through here on the Strom. The Honda is tight, but it does it. The Honda is a different sort of bike. It's a little bit more playful, a little smaller, a little more casual, but to me, speaks more to the ethos of motorcycling, what I look for when it comes to riding a bike. So let's close myself back up in the garage here, and I'll wrap up my thoughts on the two of them.
Wrapping up thoughts here on the two bikes. Again, for being so similar in their category and their engine configuration, really the bike configuration in general, they do feel significantly different. The Suzuki feels like the more premium bike. Everything from the switchgear, the paint, the way it looks, and the riding style, the suspension, it feels more mature, more subdued, a little bit more difficult, but more premium. I mean, I know that's kind of a cliche no-no word at this point in vehicle reviews, but it really does. It feels like a bike that you could ride for a longer period of time. You could do more things with it. You could put more things on it. And the engine's got the capability, but it does lack a little bit of the character. What you gain in refinement, you lose in fun factor. And that is what I appreciate about the Honda. It's weird. You would think the Honda is going to be the one that's more refined and more grown up, but no. The Honda feels more like the type of bike I would want to putz around town on. If I were commuting for, I'd say, less than an hour one way, or if I'm just going out for an motorcycle ride, whether on road or off, I'm going to want to be on the Honda. And admittedly, suspension's not as good, and the bike doesn't feel as expensive, but that's because it isn't. You get it for a lower price, and you can kind of take that extra money and build up what you need to. You could do a little bit more adjustment to the suspension. You could definitely do some different tires. You could make it more of the type of bike that you want it to be. Both of them need windshields. Both of them could use different tires. Both of them really need factory cruise control, so whoever does it first is going to have the best bike. But for me, the Honda speaks to what I appreciate about in motorcycling, and that is being different from a car, significantly different from a car, and maximizing fun. And it just does that more. I feel like I'm having a better time on the Honda. Part of that is due to the engine character and that intake note and exhaust note. And another part of it is just the little bit lighter weight and the more fun nature of the bike. But I am really impressed with the V-Strom. It continues on the V-Strom story, and I think this is a really great direction for Suzuki. I love to see the V-Strom not being seen as just this budget entry-level kind of sort of adventure bike anymore. It's a serious adventure bike and can do serious adventuring. And if you're going to be doing long-haul, multi-day sort of trips, this one, to me, is the no-brainer over the Honda. So again, it comes down to your riding preference. I'd take the Honda, but I could see plenty of reasons to take the Suzuki. And let me just say, that's not the type of conclusion we always come to here at Daily Motor. I'm not one of those type of channels who's like, oh, you know, they're both good. No, these two bikes are seriously just that good. I would be totally happy with either of them. If you want to see an example of that, watch my comparison with that bike, the G310 GS and the CRF 300L. Night and day. You could definitely tell I preferred the Honda, and I said that in there. So this isn't just oh, everybody gets to win. If this bike weren't very good or this bike weren't very good, I'd absolutely say that and tell you that. But they're both fantastic. They're both up at the top of what I think best represents the sport of motorcycling. So you really can't go wrong. So thank you all so much for watching. If you want to see more on the bikes, I got the fuel economy tests for both, full reviews for both, and I think we might even be able to fit a comparison with this and the BMW F850 GS. Never ridden that bike. It's coming next week in exchange for the little GS over there, and that'll be interesting too. Again, similar price points and ethos. And we'll see you on the next one. I'm Charlie from Daily Motor, and as always, adventure bike on.